As you can see from this aerial view, the wave is moments away.
Yes. 20 minutes before the disaster happened. Sendai, Japan, woke up to a golden and peaceful light, as if the ocean were an old friend. At the port, the movement of cargo containers followed the industrial rhythm of the morning, while at Arahama Beach, life pulsed calmly among surfers, cyclists, and people enjoying the early breeze. No one could have imagined that, miles beneath the Pacific floor, a colossal rift had just split open. The first sign was a sinister silence. The sea suddenly retreated, revealing the ocean floor and leaving boats and fish trapped in the mud. Then, emergency sirens pierced the air with a desperate warning. Major tsunami warning. Move to high ground. Panic took hold. The horizon disappeared behind a 30-meter wall of black water, advancing at a terrifying speed. The collision was brutal. The tsunami swallowed the coast, turning steel containers into projectiles and crushing buildings as if they were made of paper. The water surged into the heart of the city, dragging cars, houses, and trees through the avenues, creating a river of absolute destruction. From above, helicopters recorded the unthinkable, a metropolis being devoured by the raw fury of nature. The sound of twisting metal and the roar of the waves drowned out the cries for help. When the force of the water finally ceased, the scene was one of utter desolation. Where neighborhoods once stood, only a thick, gray mud remained. Cargo ships now rested atop rooftops, and the heavy silence was broken only by the flashing lights of ambulances. Sendai faced the awakening of a giant, leaving behind the scars of a morning the world will never forget, and the strength of a people who must now rebuild from the rubble.
Look at that wave. Paddle now.
We have to go.
大妻警報が出かれましたね。直ちら高台へ避難してくださいな。
The atmosphere in Sendai before the impact was not just one of peace, but of a millenary harmony between modernity and tradition. Known as the City of Trees, Sendai displayed its wide streets and coastal pines like a shield that, for generations, seemed eternal. However, the science behind the disaster was being written miles away, in the Japan Trench, where tectonic plates were grinding together in unbearable tension. When the crust finally gave way, the energy released was equivalent to thousands of atomic bombs. The earthquake was not merely a tremor. It was a displacement of reality itself, shifting the Earth's axis and causing the Japanese coastline to sink permanently by several centimeters. While the Earth was still shaking, the ocean was preparing its counterattack. The wave forming in the deep sea was not an isolated crest, but a mass of water miles deep, moving at the speed of a jet engine. When this energy hit the shallow waters of Sendai, physics transformed speed into height and volume. The water became a living entity, dark and heavy with toxic sediment, oil, and the debris of everything destroyed in its path. The sound that accompanied the wave's arrival was described by survivors as the roar of 1,000 freight trains passing at once. A sound that vibrated in the bones even before it reached the ears. The invasion of the city was a test of endurance for concrete and steel. Buildings that withstood the initial tremor began to groan under the hydrostatic pressure of millions of tons of water. The tsunami did not just strike structures. It circled them, creating vortexes of debris that acted like power saws, grinding through everything in their way. The port of Sendai, a pride of engineering, became a maze of twisted metal. 40-foot shipping containers floated like corks, being hurled against bridges and overpasses, toppling infrastructure that had taken decades to build. From above, the vision was a liquid apocalypse. The boundary between where the ocean ended and civilization began had been completely erased. In the moments following the peak of the flood, horror gave way to a supernatural silence, interrupted only by the popping of short circuits and the incessant dripping of dirty water from buildings. Night fell over Sendai without city lights, illuminated only by the glow of fires caused by gas leaks burning on top of the water, creating a hellish contrast between the cold flood and the heat of the flames. The smell of salt was replaced by a pungent odor of fuel and wet earth. Yet, even in total darkness, the human spirit began to move. Flashlights from rescue teams cut through the mist, and the sound of helicopters became the city's new heartbeat. Sendai was no longer just a victim of geography. It had become the stage for one of the greatest displays of resilience and solidarity in modern history, where every light in the dark represented a promise that, although the earth and sea could destroy, they could never extinguish the will to rebuild what was lost.
気をつけてください。次へ進むぞ。誰かいませんかね。聞こえますかね。
All right, let's get this side up.
Got it.
Watch your step over there.